After we bought a house together, my husband's family secretly changed the deed and smirked. Now it belongs to us. Leave or be homeless. My husband whispered, they just want to protect me. I smirked and said, oh, I protected myself too. Their smug faces turn to panic when they read the real legal documents. My husband and I bought a house together. I thought it was our dream home. I thought we were building something for us. I was wrong. His family had other plans. They changed the deed behind my back, smiled in my face and said, now it belongs to us. Leave or be homeless. Mark, my husband, sat beside me, quiet, while his mother smirked. We just want to protect our son, dear, she said sweetly, like she hadn't just stolen my home. Mark turned to me and whispered, they just want to protect me. That's when I smiled. I leaned forward, looked them all in the eye, and said, oh, I protected myself too. They thought they had won. They thought they were smart. They had no idea what was coming next. Mark and I had been together for 5 years, married for 3. We were a normal couple. He worked in software, and I worked as a paralegal. We weren't rich, but we were doing okay. We saved for 2 years to buy our first house. It wasn't a mansion, but it was ours, a 3-bedroom in San Antonio, Texas, with a big backyard. I had dreams of planting a garden. Mark talked about setting up a gaming room. It was supposed to be ours. But from the very beginning, his family made things weird. His mother, Evelyn, and his 2 older brothers, Nate and Alan, had a strange sense of ownership over him. They treated me like I was just some woman passing through his life. Every success we had, they acted like it was theirs. The first time Evelyn saw the house, she walked through every room like a real estate agent sizing up a property. She barely acknowledged me. Nate kept making comments about how this house will be great for the family. I thought they were just being their usual overbearing selves. I should have paid more attention. I started noticing little things that felt off. A few months after we moved in, Evelyn started stopping by unannounced. She had a key. I never gave her one. When I asked Mark about it, he brushed it off. I probably left mine at her house and she made a copy. It's not a big deal. Not a big deal? Then there was the mail. One day, I saw an envelope addressed to Mark's parents at our house. When I asked Mark, he said his mom probably used our address for paperwork. The biggest red flag? A few weeks before it all blew up, Nate casually mentioned, it's good to keep things in the family. What's that supposed to mean? I asked. He just smiled and shrugged. You never know what could happen. I should have pushed harder. Mark came home from work one evening, looking tense. My parents want to have dinner with us, he said. Family business. I knew what that meant. The last time they called a family meeting, it was to pressure us into giving money to Mark's cousin for a failed business. Still, I went. I shouldn't have. We met at some fancy restaurant. Evelyn was smiling like she already won something. Nate and Alan sat with their arms crossed, smirking. Then Evelyn slid a folder across the table. We made a few changes, she said. I opened it. I couldn't breathe. The deed. The house was no longer in both mine and Mark's names. It was now in Mark's name and his parents'. I felt like the floor had been ripped out from under me. What the hell is this? I said, my hands shaking. Alan leaned back in his chair. The house is a family home now. I turned to Mark. Tell me you didn't know about this. He wouldn't meet my eyes. They just want to protect me, he mumbled. It's not like we're kicking you out. That's when Evelyn spoke again. But if you don't like it, dear, you're welcome to leave. They were taking everything from me. And they were smiling while they did it. That's when I realized they thought I was powerless. I took a slow breath, looked each of them in the eye. Then, I reached into my purse. Actually, I said, I have something too. I pulled out my folder. Evelyn frowned. What's this? I smiled. Oh, just a little something I had prepared. You see, I protected myself too. I slid it across the table. They had no idea what was coming. Evelyn grabbed the papers, flipping through them. Her face went pale. Alan snatched them from her. His smug smile vanished. Mark frowned. What is this? I leaned forward. That, dear husband, is a quitclaim deed, signed by you, months ago. Nate slammed his fist on the table. What the hell is a quitclaim deed? I laughed. It means Mark signed away his ownership rights. The house? It's mine. Only mine. Evelyn's hands were shaking. You tricked him. Mark's face was red. You made me sign something without telling me? Oh no, I told you, I said. I told you it was for legal protection. You just didn't read it. Kind of like how you didn't read what your family was doing behind my back. Silence. Evelyn's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. This can't be legal. I smiled wider. Oh, it's very legal. Alan stood up so fast his chair screeched. You bitch, I raised a hand. Careful. I own the house now. And if you or your mother try to step foot on my property again, I'll have you arrested for trespassing. Evelyn looked at Mark. You can't let her do this. This is our house. Mark looked at me. He knew. He knew there was nothing he could do. I need to think, he muttered. I grabbed my purse. Take all the time you want. But don't bother coming home tonight. It's my home now. I walked out of that restaurant while they sat there in stunned silence. They thought they could take everything from me. But I wasn't stupid. I saw them coming. And I made sure I was ready. I walked out of that restaurant, my head high, my hands steady. But inside, my heart was racing. I had won the first battle. But I knew this wasn't over. Mark's family didn't lose. They didn't accept things. They took. And if I thought they were going to let this go without a fight, I was dead wrong. That night, I changed the locks. I wasn't about to let Mark waltz in with his mommy and daddy, thinking they could just take my home back. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of banging on my front door. I checked the security camera on my phone. It was Evelyn. I sighed and opened the door, but only a crack. She was dressed like she was heading to church, pearls and all, but her face was twisted with rage. Good morning, Evelyn, I said, my voice sweet. You changed the locks. I tilted my head. Of course I did. It's my house. Her nostrils flared. Mark has a right to be here. I leaned against the door frame. Mark doesn't own this house anymore. If he wants to stay somewhere, I suggest he finds a hotel. Her eyes narrowed. You're making a mistake. You think you won, but you have no idea what you've started. I smiled. Neither do you. Then I shut the door in her face. I didn't realize how serious she was until I got the letter. 2 weeks later, I got served. Evelyn and Mark were suing me. The claim? That Mark was unfairly tricked into signing away his rights, and that the house should legally belong to him and his family. They wanted the court to undo the quitclaim deed. I laughed when I read it. The desperation reeked. But I wasn't stupid. I called my lawyer immediately. Do they have a case? I asked. He skimmed the papers and snorted. They can try. But they'll lose. Still, it meant one thing. They weren't backing down. This was war. A week later, Mark showed up. Not at the front door. At my job. I was at the law office where I worked when the receptionist told me someone was asking for me. I walked into the lobby and there he was. Standing there like he hadn't just tried to sue me. I folded my arms. Mark, you're not supposed to contact me directly. That's what lawyers are for. He sighed. I didn't come to fight. He ran a hand through his hair. I don't want this to get worse. I stared at him. You don't want this to get worse? I let out a short laugh. You let your family steal from me. And when it didn't work, you tried to use the law to take it back. Mark's jaw tightened. I didn't know they were going to sue. I rolled my eyes. Right. He looked around, lowering his voice. I don't have anywhere to go. I stared at him for a long moment. Then I said, not my problem. And I walked away. I thought I was done with him. I wanted to be done. But then I found out something that made my blood run cold. I was going through my paperwork one night, preparing for the court case, when I noticed something strange in the old mortgage documents. A payment. A large sum of money deposited right before we closed on the house. And the account it came from? Evelyn's. My breath caught in my throat. She had helped pay for the house. I felt sick. This meant she might actually have a case. If she could prove that she financially contributed, a judge might consider her an interested party. And if that happened, I could lose everything. I had to do something. And I had to do it fast. The next day, I made a call. Not to my lawyer. Not to Mark. To Evelyn. She answered on the first ring. Changed your mind? She asked smugly. No, I said. But I think you should know, I found the money you put into the house. Silence. I continued. Now, I could tell the court that you helped pay for it. And that would give you some leverage. I heard her inhale sharply. Or, I smiled. Or I could tell them something else. I let the words hang. Because I had an idea. A plan forming in my mind. I wasn't going to fight Evelyn. I was going to destroy her. Evelyn was silent on the other end of the phone. I could feel her thinking, calculating, trying to figure out what I knew and what I didn't. She finally spoke. What exactly are you saying? I let the moment stretch. Then, in the calmest voice I could manage, I said, I think you committed fraud, Evelyn. I wasn't bluffing. Not completely. After I found out she helped pay for the house, I dug deeper. I went through every document, every financial record I could find. And that's when I found it. The money she gave us for the down payment? It wasn't hers. It came from a business account, one that wasn't registered under her name. At first, I thought maybe she had taken out a loan. But when I looked closer, I saw the name attached to it. It belonged to a company that no longer existed. a company that had been shut down for tax fraud. And guess who the registered owner was? Her husband. Mark's father. The same father who retired early and didn't like to talk about work. Oh. This wasn't just about my house anymore. This was bigger. Evelyn's voice turned sharp. I don't know what you think you found, but I found everything I cut in. And I wonder what the IRS would think if they knew you were using a closed business account to move money around. Silence. I continued, keeping my voice steady. It's funny, isn't it? If a judge hears that you committed financial fraud, they might not be so eager to believe you're an innocent family woman who just wants her son's house back. More silence. Then, finally, she let out a breath. What do you want? I smiled. Now we were getting somewhere. I want you to drop the lawsuit, I said. I want you to stay far away from me and my house. Evelyn let out a cold laugh. And if I don't? I shrugged, even though she couldn't see me. Then I go to the authorities. I don't just tell them about the house, I tell them about the money. And I let them dig into every little thing your husband has done in the last 15 years. More silence. Then, very quietly, she said, you think you're smart, don't you? I know I am. A long pause. Then, fine. I'll take care of it. I exhaled, but I wasn't stupid enough to relax. Because people like Evelyn, they never just walk away. I thought the lawsuit was done. I thought she was out of my life. I was wrong. A few days later, my lawyer called. We have a problem. I closed my eyes. What now? It's not Evelyn. He hesitated. It's Mark. I felt a cold wave of dread. What did he do? My lawyer sighed. He filed his own lawsuit. He's claiming that you coerced him into signing the quitclaim deed. He says you manipulated him, that you tricked him, and that he was under duress. I nearly dropped my phone. Mark was turning on me. This wasn't just his mother. This was him. I hadn't spoken to Mark since the day he showed up at my job. I assumed he was too embarrassed, too ashamed to face me. But I should have known. He wasn't a victim in all this. He wasn't just a man caught between his wife and his family. He was just like them. I drove straight to his apartment. When he opened the door, he actually looked guilty. I was going to call you, he started. I stepped inside and shut the door behind me. You're suing me. Mark rubbed his face. Look, I know. No, look. No excuses. My hands were shaking. After everything your family did. After everything you let them do. After they failed, you're trying to take me down yourself. He swallowed hard. I don't have a choice. I let out a sharp laugh. Oh, you always have a choice, Mark. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing. I don't want to do this, but I don't have anywhere to go. I don't have money. My job's been cutting hours. My credit's wrecked. I narrowed my eyes. And that's my fault? He hesitated. Then he sighed. Evelyn said she could help me. If I fight for the house. I felt my stomach turn. Of course. His family was still pulling the strings. You really think she's going to help you? I asked. She doesn't care about you, Mark. She cares about winning. He wouldn't meet my eyes. I stepped back. You deserve everything that's coming to you. Then I turned and walked out the door. And this time, I wasn't looking back. I wasn't about to let Mark and his family destroy me. I called my lawyer. We're not just fighting this, I said. We're going to bury them. He sighed. Are you sure? It's going to get ugly. I gritted my teeth. It already is ugly. We started preparing. We gathered evidence. Emails. Text messages. Witnesses. And then, something unexpected happened. A phone call. From Nate. Mark's own brother. I need to meet with you, Nate said, his voice low. I think you should know what really happened. I sat up. What do you mean? A pause. Then, Mark lied to you about everything. Nate wanted to meet in person. I wasn't sure if I could trust him, but if there was a chance he had information that could help me, I had to take it. We agreed to meet at a small coffee shop downtown. I arrived first, my heart pounding. A part of me wondered if this was a trap, if Mark and his family were trying to pull something else. But when Nate walked in, he looked uneasy. Not smug. Not like he was about to screw me over. Like he was about to drop a bomb. Nate sat across from me, rubbing his hands together. I don't even know where to start. I crossed my arms. Try the part where Mark lied to me. He exhaled, nodding. Okay. So, the whole Mark had no idea about the lawsuit? That was bullshit. I clenched my jaw. I figured that much. No, Nate said. You don't understand. Mark was in on it from the start. The whole plan? Changing the deed? Convincing you to sign the quitclaim? That wasn't Evelyn's idea. My breath hitched. What? Nate looked me dead in the eye. It was Mark's. From the beginning. The world tilted. I gripped the edge of the table. You're lying. I wish I was. Nate ran a hand down his face. Evelyn wanted to protect the house, sure, but she didn't come up with the plan. Mark did. He played you. He knew you'd be careful. He knew you'd be suspicious of his family. So, he made himself look innocent, like the poor husband caught in the middle. And you bought it. I swallowed hard. So, Mark never loved me. Nate hesitated. I think he did. At some point. But in the end, he loved security more. The house, the money, his family's approval. He shook his head. He bet on you not fighting back. He thought you'd either accept it or walk away. I felt sick. Nate continued, the reason I'm telling you this? Mark is desperate. He knows he's losing. And Evelyn? She's already making plans to cut him loose if it means saving herself. I stared at him. So why are you here? Nate exhaled. Because I hate my family. And I hate what they turned him into. Mark and I used to be close, but after seeing what he's done to you, he's beyond saving. And honestly, his eyes darkened. I want to see you win. I leaned back in my chair, my mind racing. Mark wasn't just weak. He was calculated. Manipulative. He knew exactly what he was doing. And that meant one thing. I wasn't just going to fight. I was going to end him. The trial was set for 2 weeks later. Evelyn and Mark arrived with their lawyers, sitting on the opposite side of the courtroom. Mark looked nervous. Evelyn, however, still had that damn smirk on her face. I stayed calm, because I knew what was coming. When Mark's lawyer tried to argue that I manipulated him into signing the quitclaim deed, my lawyer countered with hard evidence. Emails, text messages, proof that Mark had orchestrated the entire thing from the start. And then, just when I thought Mark couldn't be any dumber, my lawyer played the voicemail. A voicemail from Mark to Evelyn, recorded a few weeks before the lawsuit. His voice came through the speakers, shaky but clear. Mom, stop panicking. She'll never know what hit her. The house is ours. She's too cautious to fight back. And, even if she does, you know the courts favor the husband. Just let me handle it. I turned my head, watching the blood drain from Mark's face. Evelyn? She looked murderous. The judge took a long pause before turning to Mark's lawyer. Does your client have any rebuttal? Silence. Mark's lawyer turned to him. Do you want to continue? Mark's mouth opened, then closed. He looked around, his gaze darting to his mother, to his brothers, then finally to me. I held his gaze. And I smirked. Because this was the moment he realized he had lost. The judge ruled in my favor. Not only did I keep the house, but Mark's attempt to commit fraud meant he owed me for legal fees and damages. I walked out of that courtroom free. Mark, on the other hand? He walked out with nothing. And Evelyn? Oh, the moment the trial ended, she tore into him. I didn't catch all of it, but I heard her hiss, you ruined everything. You embarrassed this family. You're no son of mine. I had to fight the urge to laugh. Mark tried calling me a few times after that. I never answered. Last I heard, he lost his job. His family completely cut him off. I guess they didn't see the point in keeping him around once he wasn't useful. He tried moving in with friends, but no one wanted to take in a guy who had burned every bridge in his life. Evelyn and her husband? Well, they had a bigger problem, the IRS. Turns out, once my lawyer sent them everything I found about the fraudulent business accounts, the government took a serious interest in their finances. I heard rumors that their assets were frozen, that they were being investigated for tax evasion. Karma is a beautiful thing. Sometimes I think back to the beginning. To the day Mark and I first walked into that house together, picking out paint colors, dreaming about our future. It feels like another lifetime. I spent years loving someone who, in the end, saw me as disposable. Who planned, behind my back, to rip everything away from me. And that should have broken me. But instead, I walked away stronger. I walked away smarter. And most importantly, I walked away with my house still mine. And that's a win I'll never stop smiling about.